Well, hello and welcome to episode 114 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here as always with Michaela. And Michaela, we have made it back from sunny Florida. We got some rest and relaxation time in. We had a bit of a crisis when we were thinking about all of the Oscar films we had to watch, but that's okay because there are some classics that, just deserve your attention, no matter what time of year, no matter what you have going on. And one of those is The Fugitive. Of course, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But one of the other ones, it's a movie that you should just periodically watch, like every 2 or 3 months. Just put this on. You're gonna have a great time. We covered it on an episode. Made one of our favorite cocktails ever. It's called The Miracle Pill. But The Princess Bride, that's a movie you should watch all the time. And I think you might have just watched that. Is that true?
That is true. That is true. I did, and I watched it in a theater, like a stage theater that put a big screen up, in Newton, North Carolina, of all places. I don't know why
As you do. As you do.
It was really special because Carrie Elwes, who is the Man in Black, or AKA Wesley, AKA the Dread Pirate Roberts, he was there to do like a question and answer session afterwards. And then I was really excited because I got to meet him and gush all over how amazing he is. And, he's been on a lot of films. His career has spanned, 40 years almost. He's obviously maybe mostly well known for this film that had its 35th anniversary last year, which was The Princess Bride. But he's done horror. He was in Saw. He's done some really fun comedies. He's done shows. He was in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He's going to be in the new action Mission Impossible that's coming out. And
he was in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
He was in Robin Hood Men in Tights, which is really hilarious and funny. He was in one of my favorite Philip Seymour Hoffman films of all time, Twister. And he tells amazing stories. He has a book out called As You Wish, and it's about the making of the film and his stories with Andre the Giant and Mandy Patinkin and Rob Reiner and all of these amazing character actors. He's obviously Billy Crystal's in it, and he's got all these great kind of vignette stories. And so it was really cool to hear him talk about them firsthand. And he is just a very, very sweet person. And I never got to meet him until this weekend, and that was amazing. And I totally gushed a little bit. I did talk about the podcast in like 3 seconds, and so we're just waiting. Mr. Elwes, if you're listening, you were amazing. Thank you so much for being so nice to me. And well, I cried. Basically.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we covered that. If you want to go back and listen to it, it was episode 7. So we were pretty fresh into the podcast game then.
Yeah.
So maybe the podcast wasn't that good, but the cocktail was very good. It was called the Miracle Pill. It had coffee and chocolate, amaretto. It was delicious. So definitely go give it a check out, even if you're just going to be making up that cocktail and watching the movie. So that is some fun stuff. And like I said, Michaela, today we were talking about The Fugitive, a classic film from the 90s. Played a big part in American sort of kind of action crime dramas going forward for that time period. So why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break, and we're going to be back with a cocktail to drink in homage to the fugitive, Dr. Kimble himself. So we'll take a break, and we'll be right back.
So this week's cocktail comes from one of our favorites, CinemaSips. Yay! I love that. So if you're new to the Drink of the Movies family, welcome. Pull up a chair, pull up a shaker. We have a lot of friends that we have met while coursing the internet and making up cocktail ingredients and making up cocktail recipes and all that. So one of our favorites is CinemaSips. If you've not gone to their website, it's amazing. They, I think she just put out a book, so you can pre-order. This Liz is a woman after my own heart. We've never actually met, but Liz, I love you. She does all these amazing movies and cocktails, and it's just a really, really fun blog. I love it so much. We recommend it here at Drink the Movies, and but we don't want to use it too much. But this one was just too good to pass up, and it is one of my favorite movies is The Fugitive. And so when we started looking, this kept coming up on our search as we were kind of coursing the world. And I think it really does justice and to the film and to the relationship really between Tommy Lee Jones and Harrison Ford. And it's called The Manhunt.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So the last time we used a CinemaSips recipe was for another Harrison Ford movie, Working Girl. So maybe I think you just have a thing for cocktails and Harrison Ford, Michaela. I think that is really what it's about here today. And Harrison Ford is donning a very lovely beard at the beginning of this movie. So what could be wrong with that for sure? But yeah, let's talk about this cocktail a little bit. The Manhunt. It's going to be pretty simple to put together. You're just going to put this into a shaker tin with some ice. Just put all these ingredients in there, give it a little swoosh, dump it out into your glass, put a cherry on top, and you are good to go. But this one's dead simple, Michaela. Probably stuff you already have. 2 ounces of Jameson, 4 dashes of lemon juice, question mark, we're going to come back to that. 1 teaspoon of granulated sugar, and a little bit of a splash of some sparkling water, club soda, whatever you have. If you have some flavored sparkling water, you could probably use that too, if you wanted to. It's just going to give it a little bit of effervescence, kind of break up that sugar, give it something to dissolve into a little bit. Stir it up, pour it into your glass, drink it up, and away you go.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. So I made this on my own. We weren't able to make this one together. So luckily we had all the ingredients. Love the simplicity of it. I didn't know what 4 dashes of lemon was. So I basically took my lemon juicer and I just shook it 4 times into the shaker. And I don't know. I think that ended up being like a teaspoon of lemon juice. I'm not real sure. But this drink was real strong at first. When I took my first sip, I was like, oh, this is real bad. I don't like it at all. But I will say that given a little bit of time for the ice to melt, what we had is a very layered, very lovely, kind of velvety, even if that's the right word, kind of a cocktail. It's boozy, but not overly so. And by the end of it, man, I really wanted to have a second one. The cherry, you want to wait until you have that last. You can eat it first, I guess, but I like to wait because I wanted it to soak up some of the Jameson and kind of the sweetness. And so it was very delicious at the end, which is great because it takes the whole movie for everyone to get their just desserts. And so
that's right. Yeah.
What did you think of this one?
Yeah, so same kind of as you. I wasn't 100% sure on the lemon juice. I gave a kind of a lemon wedge, just a little half squeeze. So I probably used somewhere in the neighborhood of a teaspoon and a half, tablespoon, something like that into mine. And I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty tart, I thought, from the lemon juice. I don't know if maybe I'd used too much, but like you mentioned, Michaela, as soon as that ice starts to melt, it all starts to come together. It needs a little bit of that residual water from your ice melting to tie this one together. And I kind of likened this as to like a halfway between an old fashioned that you're making with some sugar and some bitters in your whiskey, and a whiskey sour, which is, some lemon juice, some simple syrup, something like that. So this really, if you think about it, is the perfect drink if you're on the run. You don't have all the ingredients at hand. So, you throw some lemon in there and you're good to go. It makes a delicious cocktail. And like you said, by the end of this thing, it's all come together just the same way as it does in The Fugitive. So give this one a try. I might try this same kind of technique with some different types of whiskey. Maybe like a smoky Scotch would be good in this, or something, with a little bit more fire to it, like a rye whiskey could be good. Cut through that lemon a little bit. So I'm definitely excited to check this one out and play around with it a little bit. And thanks again to CinemaSips for the good recipe. And I don't know, Michaela, I think what we should do probably, it's St. Patrick's Day in the Fugitive Land. That's why we're using the Jameson. So let's go grab the bottle. We'll mix up another 1 or 2 of these. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back to chat about whether it was the one-armed man all along. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Spoiler warning for The Fugitive. If you've not yet seen this film and you don't want us to spoil it for you, then I suggest you press pause. You go watch this movie. It's 130 minutes. Good luck. And you can come back. You can make yourself a manhunt. You're probably going to want to do that at the outset because by the time you finish, you too will know what happened. That fateful night when Dr. Richard Kimble arrived home to find his wife fatally injured by a man with a prosthetic arm. Dun dun dun!
That's right. What a great recap, Michaela. Thank you for that. If you haven't seen it, you've had ample time, and this one got all the accolades. So this one came out in 1993. It was directed by Andrew Davis, and it stars a bearded Harrison Ford as Dr. Richard Kimble and Tommy Lee Jones as the U.S. Marshal, the dogged Samuel Gerard. Like I mentioned, Michaela, this was pretty well received, pretty well critically acclaimed. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, won one. Tommy Lee Jones, Best Supporting Actor. Good job, Mr. Jones. But it lost Best Score, Best Sound Effects, Best Sound, Best Film Editing, Best Cinematography, and Best Picture. Because Steven Spielberg decided that he was going to release Jurassic Park and Schindler's List that year. And they won all of those things. So,
yeah, they did. And rightfully so. However, this film has a special place in a lot of people's hearts. It is a solid movie, and we're going to talk about it. So I guess we should begin with sort of the premise. As we've said, Harrison Ford is Dr. Richard Kimble. He's a vascular surgeon. And as one of the characters says, that's somebody who makes more money than me. So he and his wife,
same. Yeah.
same, right. He and his wife were at a charity benefit. His wife is played by the absolutely beautiful Stella Ward. And they come home. She comes home a little early because he's called into surgery. He gets home. And I love the opening scenes because there's a lot of back and forth of what happened prior to Dr. Kimble coming home, what's happening after Dr. Kimble comes home, and then sort of interspersed with those is what we think actually happened versus what the cops think might have happened to his poor wife. So Dr. Richard Kimble, he comes home, and his whole story is he comes home. There was a man in his house. This man had a mechanical arm, and he found his wife dead. He tried to revive her because he was a doctor, and he was unsuccessful. And so he's being interviewed at the beginning of this film by these 2 cops from Chicago. They're really unhelpful. They're amazing. They're amazing at being really unhelpful and very unempathetic. I think this is not this is a very hard role, I think, to see Harrison Ford in, because he's very vulnerable and but he really doesn't know how to answer their questions without making himself look really bad, because there's a lot of things that don't look great on the outset of this, right?
That's right. Yeah, he's Han Solo. He is Indiana Jones. He's not supposed to be vulnerable, but Harrison Ford is Dr. Richard Kimble in this, and he's absolutely brilliant at it. This movie, it gets opened up, like you said, it's really, really cool. So it's got like a bunch of aerial footage of Chicago. It's going over, and like you'll hear like these hard like musical beats. This was something that if you watch any semi-action movies from the 90s, it's going to be the same thing. It's the same musical motifs here throughout, but it's kind of interspersed with these black and white shots of like the actual crime going down, and the aerial shots, the crime going down, and then they're at this gala, and Dr. Richard Kimble is at the police station. He's all scratched up, like you said, Michaela. The cops are talking to him, and boom, guilty. We do a lot of true crime in our own podcast listening. We know that the husband always did it 10 times out of 10, and that's what these cops think. Boom, Dr. Richard Kimble, you are guilty. You are sentenced to the death penalty. You're on your way. So we've got the whole like setup for this whole story done in the first like 3 minutes of the movie, because this movie is not about that. It's not about Dr. Richard Kimble committing this crime or not. It's not about that. It's about him being pursued by one very dogged investigator from the U.S. Marshals Department, one Samuel Gerard, played by Tommy Lee Jones. And we get to that right away, because when you're in your prison transfer on bus or whatever it was, one of the other inmates decides they're done being there, which leaves Dr. Richard Kimble with the option to stay and get run over by a train, or to go and try to find this one-armed man.
That's right. Now, there's a bunch of layers to this, and we'd probably talk for as long as the movie is about all the layers, because it is a really amazing film for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that keeps coming back is Dr.
Mostly
Richard
Harrison
Kimble.
Ford's beard is the most reason why it's amazing.
That's right. That's why it's so great. But one of the things about Dr. Kimble is that he's genuinely a good person. So there's this car crash, the bus is turned over and it's sitting on these tracks, and he has to decide whether to save one of the prison guards who is injured, or and get him out, or save himself. And so he decides to drag this prison guard out of the wreckage. And of course, no one sees that. It's kind of puzzling for U.S. Marshal Sam Gerard at first when it comes out that it was in fact Dr. Kimble that saved him and not anybody else. But Sam, U.S. Marshal Sam, he doesn't care. He's got a job, and his job is not to know what the truth is. His job is not to find out whether or not he killed his wife and find the person who really did it. His job is to just find this fugitive. And so the first couple of days of what happened in this film are really just these kind of chasing scenes with an amazing score behind it around Dr. Kimble figuring out what his next steps are. Now that he's gotten out of this crash that occurs, he's presumed dead by everybody except for Sam Gerard knows that he's probably still alive, and he and his team of amazing U.S. deputy marshals kind of are putting checkpoints in place, and Dr. Kimble's running through old fields, and he's by a river, and he's trying not to fall asleep, and all the while he's trying to figure out what his next step is going to be but also maintaining being a genuinely good person, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty great, kind of this little opening section, and you see how kind of good at his job, I guess, Samuel Gerard is, right? He gets there, he's like, no, you don't have all of your prisoners accounted for. I know someone's still alive, even though the officers on the scene were like, no, they all dead, or they're all dead. That train hit the bus. They all died. But then they find the shackles, way off in the distance. And turns out that Samuel Gerard was right all along. He does some quick math in his head. He said he can go, 4 miles an hour, and he's been going for 90 minutes. So that gives him 6 miles to go 6 miles out. We're going to find this guy. And yeah, it's a lot of kind of pursuit. And you get kind of that first, that big kind of iconic, scene from The Fugitive. Whenever people think of The Fugitive, or you see a picture of The Fugitive, it's down in that storm drain tunnel, which is kind of one of the first places that Dr. Kimble goes. He slides into this storm sewer. He's down there, and Samuel Gerard kind of sees that, realizes that he went down there, and they have their first kind of pursuit. And it does, it really kind of shows us, because Dr. Kimble is a good guy, because he's able to get the gun from Samuel Gerard. Could have shot him, been on his way. That would have been better for escaping, but doesn't do that, right? Because he's a good person. He is going to let that slide and say, you know what, Officer Gerard, I didn't kill my wife. What does Officer Gerard say? I don't care. I don't care if you killed your wife, because my job is to arrest you. And that is exactly what's going to happen. Or you're going to throw yourself out of this giant waterfall thing. You're probably going to die. So those are your options, guy. So what does Dr. Kimble do? He jumps.
He jumps. And it's terrifying. I think I'd probably just turn myself in. And of course, everyone then is like, dude, he's dead. He's fish food. There's no way. I mean, it looks like it's a 300-foot drop. It's probably not, because he does live. But it looks like it's huge. This kind of, it looks like a very small version of the Hoover Dam is what it looks like. And so he, Dr. Kimble ends up being okay. He finds himself in a hospital, like he goes and sneaks in, and he's a doctor, so fixes himself up, tries to get some new clothes, and goes back to the city he was from, goes back to Chicago. And and Sam Gerard is telling everyone, look, he's not dead. If he's dead, there's a body. We're going to find it. And I'm not going to let this go, and I'm not going to give it up. But something starts to happen to Sam. I'm not going to say he starts to care, but it does noodle on him a little bit, because he doesn't understand why, if a person was wanted for the murder of their wife. And if they were going to just be captured and put back on death row, why would they go back to the city that they were from? Why wouldn't they try to go to Mexico or try to go somewhere else? And he starts to reopen the investigation kind of unofficially. So he and his team, played by the amazing, like, Joe Pantoliano's in the team. L. Scott Caldwell, who's one of my favorite characters, Aaron Poole. Johnny Lee Davenport plays the youngest kind of deputy U.S. Marshal Henry. They kind of start going back through all of the old interviews, all of the old pieces of evidence. They go back to the crime scene because it's only been a year and since the crime actually occurred, and he's trying to understand why Dr. Kimble's so adamant that he didn't do it, and why, if it was this one-armed guy that they can't find and that they have no evidence of at all, what would they do with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So he's back to Chicago. He is going to be doing some investigating on his own. Dr. Kimble is, to try to get to the bottom of this. He knows that he's not guilty. He knows someone else was in that room. And he's a smart guy. He's going to be able to figure this out. And kind of interspersed with this, you get little kind of little snippets into his actually running. So I've mentioned it a couple of times just because I think it's funny to see Harrison Ford with a beard, but he has this beard that he shaves, and then you'll see him like coloring his hair from like this gray to this darker black. He's basically de-aging himself, which is pretty great. So you know, to kind of stay on the down low a little bit, he's been in, he's stolen some clothes, he's been into the hospital, he's gotten the hold of a badge from a maintenance guy there because you know, if you're dealing with a one-armed man who has this prosthetic arm, you're a doctor, you know that those things are pretty you know, pretty traceable. You're going to be able to find out who they made that for. Everyone is specific to, you know, each individual person. So maybe if that person was from Chicago too, maybe we could get back into the hospital and figure out where it came from. And that's kind of what he's going to do. He's running down some leads. I really like he takes on like this little like cash apartment. And luckily for Dr. Kimble, he has a friend. So we think. Anyway, Dr. Nichols, one of his doctor colleagues, pays him a visit a couple of times. He gives him some cash to be on his way. Dr. Nichols isn't exactly what he seems, but he seems to be helpful for right now, at least.
Yeah, I love the interview where Tommy Lee Jones's character and his kind of entourage of U.S. Marshals go to talk to Dr. Nichols, and he says, "Hey, you know, we're just here on a routine investigation. You know, this guy's escaped. We're trying to find him. Have you seen him?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I saw him this morning." And they're like, "What? What?" I mean, Sam is like laughing at him, like, "I'm sorry, and you didn't think to tell us this?" And he's like, "No, I think he was innocent, and I think he's really smart, and you're never going to catch him." And I love it because Sam looks at his team, he kind of laughs, and he says, "Well, is he smarter than you? Is he as smart as you are?" And of course, Dr. Nichols says he's smarter, and he's not wrong. It takes a little bit of time for Dr. Kimble to put it all together. And he has some friends still in the hospital. We see a very young, wonderful Jane Lynch. She is Dr. Kathy Wieland, and she is, I think she's a pathologist. He's looking into tissue samples because it turns out that there was a drug that was a experimental drug called RUD90 that was and had a name Provasic that they were using for livers or kidneys. And as a vascular surgeon, he was getting a lot of issues with patients that were coming in that were having heavy bleeding in their liver. And he was looking at that as a possible motive for someone wanting to kill him. And so what Dr. Kathy did, and in her interview even, she said he would never come to me, but I would help him. And he finally does go to her and say, "I need you to look at these samples." And she's able to say that, "Oh yeah, all of these samples that they're using as a front for the research and a baseline for the research for this drug that they're trying to go make tons of money off of is all from the same liver. And it's all a sham and it's not real." And you know, Harrison Ford's character, Dr. Kimble, was getting very close to discovering this himself. And so that was the motive behind his wife's death. His wife was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's really unfortunate. And they hired a hitman to make this happen. So you have kind of this dual part of the film where you have Sam Gerard doggedly searching for Harrison Ford, and then Harrison Ford doggedly searching for the truth. And what I have to say is that the score for this film is absolutely amazing. James Newton Howard composed the film's musical score, and I love it. I love watching it. I love listening to it, just because it is so very representative of the chase on both of their sides, from both of their points of view. And it's really, when it comes to a head at the very end, it's like epically done. And I'm not a music person, but I truly enjoyed the score. And I'm really sad that it didn't win for that. But what are you going to do against John Williams?
You can't do anything against John Williams and Schindler's List,
That's right.
for sure. But this is, yeah, it is a really great score, and it really kind of frames, like you said, kind of that pursuits and kind of the way that things are going. And as we go kind of through this film, it's you mentioned it's laid out in a couple of parts, and it really starts to come to a head once Dr. Kimble gets back to Chicago. It's kind of unfolding in this way where his oath and creed as a doctor is going to get him into some trouble, and it's going to start leaving some breadcrumbs for Sam to start following a little bit. Kind of the closer that Dr. Kimble gets to figuring out who this one-armed man is, the closer Samuel Gerard is to catching up with Dr. Kimble, right? Because you have to leave some doors open to get through this. So we'd mentioned he's been into the prosthetics lab. He's kind of narrowed it down to these 5 people who could potentially be the one-armed man. They kind of fit all the criterion for the things that he remembers about that night, and he's going to start tracking them down. But before he really gets into all of that, he is at the hospital, of course, and there's some sort of trauma has come in. There's a young boy laying there on a gurney. He's not doing good. The doctor apparently doesn't know what he's talking about, or has some x-rays of his lungs. Dr. Kimble, that's his jam. He knows what's going on right there. So when one doctor, Julianne Moore, points at him and says, "Take this kid to the operating room," or whatever, he says, "Okay, me, all right." So he does, and he changes his charts and things, and that tips her off, right? So she's like, that janitor guy did something with that kid. Who is that guy? Better call the police." And that is going to tip off Samuel Gerard. So now kind of that door is open. Sam knows exactly where he is, what he's doing, what he's up to, and it's up to Dr. Kimble now. It's a race against the clock. It's a race against Gerard. It's a race against time, because he's running out of minutes.
Yeah. And I love that particular scene, because he's, again, not, we're not used to seeing Harrison Ford be super vulnerable as, his other kind of more iconic characters, perhaps, but he does a really good job of showing us the humanity. And it's a kid who's on a gurney. It looks like his chest has been crushed. And at first they're like, "Oh, he's fine." And he's like, "Check the film." He's like whispering it under his breath, because he's watching, I guess there was a huge accident, so they're very short staffed. But he's watching them kind of not look at the right stuff. And so he ends up saving this young child's life, which is really cool. But again, Sam is like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would he come back to the very hospital he worked at? And as they're talking about this person kind of walks through them, down this hallway, and he's missing an arm. And they're like, "Oh, that's what he's doing. He really thinks that, the person is here." And so they start doing checks, and they find this guy named Frederick Sykes. Frederick Sykes works for a pharmaceutical company. He has one arm. He lives in this really kind of ramshackle apartment. But that doesn't matter, because Dr. Kimble finds it. He goes in and looks around, and then he calls Sam Gerard. And at first, Sam thinks that it's a joke. And of course, he said, Dr. Kimble, to prove it's him, asks what he said to him in that spillway. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I found a big piece of a puzzle, and and then they think he's going to hang up, but he doesn't hang up. He traces the call. So of course, then the U.S. Marshals and the police are at Sykes's house and they're questioning him. And Sykes is played by Andreas Katsoulas. Really great. Really great character, because you see that he has also changed his appearance since that night. He looks a little bit different. He's still missing an arm, but he looks a little different. And he is calling someone, and you don't know who it is at first, but he's like, hey, I don't know what's going on, but they came to my house again, and they're getting closer. And we find out at this point who that person is. And it's such a shame, because Dr. Richard Kimble's one of his only friends has had it in him for the beginning and had orchestrated this entire thing. And that was
Dr. Nichols.
Dr. Nichols.
Dun dun dun. It was Dr. Nichols all along. Yeah, that's right. He has taken a job on the board of this pharmaceutical company. And when Dr. Richard Kimble is about to throw some cold water on the fire, that is a lot of money for you. You get upset and you hire a hitman to go and kill him. But bad news, he wasn't there when the hitman showed up, but his wife was. So ends up, startled by her, kills the wife, kills Helen. That's bad. And Dr. Kimble shows up, kind of at the end of this, and that's okay, because you can pin the murder on him maybe and get away with it. But don't underestimate Dr. Richard Kimble, because he has it all figured out now. And now, to his benefits, I guess, Samuel Gerard has it figured out too. Kimble leaves some pictures open on the desk. He puts a bunch of fingerprints on one. He's like, why are there so many fingerprints on one? Oh, these guys look familiar. Oh, okay. Dr. Nichols all along. Let's go check into that. So that's what Dr. Kimble does. He goes to this, I don't know, this hotel or something, where they're having some big, I don't know, kind of announcement about how great they are or something like that. And Dr. Nichols is up there talking. So when Dr. Richard Kimble walks in and everyone turns and is like, oh, that's the doctor guy that killed his wife. He's supposed to be in prison. He's on every newspaper in the whole country right now. What's he doing here? And he's calling him out. He says, Dr. Nichols, you did this. Why'd you do this? Let's go up onto the roof and settle this right now, once and for all, because this is my last shot. They're going to come and arrest me, put me back in jail, death sentence. They don't care. Samuel Gerard already told me he doesn't care if I'm innocent or not. He just wants to put me back in jail. So let's go in this thing right now.
That's right. And that's the only thing, I think, if I were to critique this film from here to the end, takes a little bit too long for my liking. There's a lot of back and forth between Dr. Kimble and Dr. Nichols, right? Dr. Nichols is played by Jérôme Crabbe. I'm hoping I said your last name right, sir. You're amazing. Never plays a nice guy, this guy, and always does it super well. It's got to be done. And Dr. Nichols, man, he's so calm and calculating and awful. And he just gets so mad at Dr. Kimble. He's like, you just never give up. Why didn't you just give up? Like, you just needed to go to jail and stay there. And
well, yeah. And he is so great, because he said he always plays a bad guy, never a good guy, but you think he's a good guy up until kind of this very end. It's exactly. A really good bait and switch. He seems like a very good friend, very, very willing to help. Dr. Kimble, comes up to him at his car. He's here, take, I don't have a lot of money, but here, take this money that'll help you go on your way. He's very upfront with the police about, hey, he was here and I helped him and he's my friend and he's smarter than you. And
yeah, totally. So you're definitely,
yeah.
You're definitely on Team Nichols until you realize that he's the one who he borrowed Dr. Kimble's car that night. And so that he had the keys. That's why there was no forced entry. I mean, all of the things that they use, and we talk about, you mentioned it before, where we listen to a lot of true crime, all the things that they used as evidence to point the finger at Harrison Ford. There was no fingerprints, there was no other DNA, there was no forced entry. She was even more rich than he was, even though he was a doctor and probably made buku money. I mean, all of these things were used against him, and it was because he trusted his friend, and his friend would know that this is how that would go down. And so the good thing is Sam knows it too. And Sam and Sam's team are also kind of on this rooftop looking for both of them. Sam, I love this exchange between the two of them as they're kind of hiding from each other and searching for each other. Sam says, hey, I know you didn't kill your wife. I know it was Nichols. I know how it was done. I know everything. But you got to come out because somebody else is going to get hurt. And so they end up, and again, Harrison Ford has the opportunity as Dr. Richard Kimble to kill Nichols, and he doesn't. He just, incapacitates him. Again, this first do no harm kind of oath that he keeps over and over. He keeps up, he keeps up his end of it. And it's really pretty special because at the end, it's pandemonium at this, I think it's a Hilton, all the doctors at this conference, they're all shocked and awed.
Yeah.
Dr. Nichols is taken away in cuffs and he's all bleeding and gross. And poor Joe Pantoliano's character, he's like, he took like a giant brick to the face or something. And so he's going away in an ambulance. And Tommy Lee Jones's character, Sam Marshall's taking Dr. Kimble to the police car. And of course, he's all bandaged up. He looks awful. Dr. Kimble does. And I love the very final scene because Sam hands him these ice packs for his hands. And Dr. Kimble says, "I thought you didn't care." And he kind of smiles and Sam says, "I don't, but don't tell anybody, okay?" Like, this is our secret.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Samuel Gerard is a consummate professional through and through all the way to the end. But yeah, in that last scene there, right, Dr. Nichols has the chance, I guess, to shoot our U.S. Marshal, but is not able to do so because Dr. Kimble gets to him first there. And yeah, hopefully you think now that everything is going to work out A-okay for Dr. Richard Kimble. It was the one-armed man after all. He was telling the truth the whole time. But no one believed him until the very end. He had to do a lot of dogged pursuit to or a lot of his own investigating to clear his name. So kudos to you, Sir Dr. Richard Kimble, and kudos to this film because it is it's one of the greats. It's one of the great films kind of all time. It's one of the films like instantly whenever I put this on or see it, like it transports me back. Like there's something very like early mid 90s about it, like in the way that it looks and feels. It's very transformative about that. It does have one kind of continuity error. You would never be able to rent out a whole hotel for your thing in St. Patrick's Day weekend in Chicago. Can't do it. There's like 10 million people go to Chicago that weekend.
Absolutely
they show the river being green. It's pretty awesome. But yeah, you can't do that at St. Patrick's Day weekend. Set it on a different weekend. And maybe they did in the TV show, right? So this was created from a TV show back in 1963. Apparently also very good. I've not ever seen the TV show. Have you ever seen the TV show?
I have not.
Okay, so apparently it won a lot of awards. It was really well received, and then obviously this one got some awards as well, and it spawned some other things. There have been a couple of their fugitive kind of series, miniseries kinds of things that haven't done particularly well. It spawned another movie called U.S. Marshals that stars Tommy Lee Jones back to recreate his role as Samuel Gerard. That did okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't up to the level of this, but it was good enough. I think Wesley Snipes was in it. I don't remember it that well, but
Robert Downey Jr. is in it as well, and that's pretty awesome.
Iron Man. Okay.
Yeah, back in the day. And so this is almost a perfect film. There are a couple of things that bother me. Yeah, the continuity about that you mentioned where they and today you would never have that. I don't think since COVID we've had I've seen any sort of convention where doctors get together to talk about how great they are. I think now they're too busy or something. I don't know, but
it's a bad book. It's a bad book to do it now. Bad book.
Maybe they don't do that anymore. I don't know. But there's a couple of things. One thing that always bothered me that I think that is very real that they leave in this, and it bothers me because it's probable that it could happen in real life, is they listen to the 911 call that Mrs. Kimble gives because she's killed because she's shot, but she's also bludgeoned to death with like a paperweight
or something,
in the back of her head. And both of those things, first of all, the gun is her husband's gun. It's registered in his name, and she thinks she's going to use it as self-defense, and that's not what happens. And now she's dead, and that's really bad. But she makes a 911 call, and they use the 911 call against Dr. Kimble as kind of a witness testimony after the fact. So one of the things that I think is so haunting and that shows throughout, that haunts him, Dr. Kimble, is she's saying that someone's in the house and he's trying to kill her. And at the end, she says, Richard is trying to kill me. And you don't really know if she's saying, Richard, he's trying to kill me, like someone else is trying to kill me, or if she's talking to him and saying, can you help me because someone is here and you need to come home, or you need to come upstairs because she can hear him downstairs. It's really heartbreaking because there are probably people, well, we know this, right? We don't have a perfect court system, clearly, and there are people that are probably sitting on death row doing time that they shouldn't be doing for something like that, that's either been taken out of context or something. And this film doesn't really talk about like the kind of the greater good that could come out of really doing a good investigation or reinvestigating something where someone is going to death row. But I do remember thinking that in 1993 when I saw this, that for these types of crimes where we're going to make a decision where we're going to end another person's life as a punishment for them doing a crime. I'm not saying I'm pro or against that, but I do think that this is a really good example, albeit a fictional one, of when the system gets it wrong. And so you want to make sure to have, because at the end of the day, all of that evidence was explainable, all of it.
Yeah, for sure. And you bring up the kind of the point. That's not really what this movie is about. Just back in just a few episodes back, just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Shawshank Redemption, and that's the same kind of thing. It's not really a movie that's about the crime or about the justice system, so to speak. This story here, The Fugitive, is really more of kind of a, I don't know. It's a cat and mouse story. It's kind of a commitment to your duty story, more so than it is, really a story about crime and punishment, so to speak. Is it's really kind of this relationship that Samuel Gerard and Dr. Richard Kimble come to cultivate over this thing as adversaries, and ultimately to some sort of level of respect that they get. And as the way I see it is, Samuel Gerard is really coming to kind of respect Richard Kimble for doing the right thing kind of at every turn, despite kind of the consequences that he's facing for something that he did or didn't do. So that's kind of the way I see it anyway. So Michaela, you mentioned that this was one of your favorites. It came out in 1993. You just alluded to the fact that you saw it in 93. It's rated PG-13. We were right about that age for this to be something that we would have seen back then. Is this did you go and see this at the movie theater? Do you remember seeing it at home? Do you remember your first time seeing it? And how has that changed, I guess, in the time? In the years since. So I do remember seeing this. My dad took me to see it. It was rated PG-13, but not for, it's not super violent. It's not super sexually graphic or anything like that. I think that nowadays this might even be PG. I don't know. It's, times change. I don't know. It's very adult content, for sure, because it's dealing with the murder of someone's wife and things like that. But, I love this film, and I hadn't seen it in years. And it just came to me as we were trying to, figure out some of the great movies during, we're gearing up for Oscar season and films that were solid, that stand the test of time. And this definitely does, because it's both like nostalgic of the early 90s, but also this could be set almost today, given a lot of the stuff that happens and the way in which it's filmed. You really get that the dynamic between these two characters is really special. And like, I think that that's something that is why it's continuously on, it's continuously on some of these top hundreds movies, especially certainly movies that are based on true crime, or these kind of detective chase films. This is one of the best because it doesn't, it takes itself real seriously, but it has kind of the acting prowess to back it up. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'd mentioned it kind of at the top. To me, this feels very, very much like a mid-90s film, but you could see it kind of playing out in and any sort of time period. It's very timeless in that there's nothing really that kind of sets it in the early 90s other than just the way that the movie feels. And the director, Andrew Davis, did a lot of movies like this that are of the um, same kind of I don't know, a feel and look and aesthetic, kind of these kind of like softer like action type films. So he did stuff like Under Siege, and he did A Perfect Murder and Collateral Damage. They're kind of like these action films, but they're action adjacent. They weren't like the big, like over the top action films. They were kind of these more toned down, a little bit more kind of personal stories within those things. And that's what The Fugitive kind of is to me. It's an action film, but it's really more of kind of a personal tale of these two characters. And yeah, it's just really great. And in a year that it was never going to win any of those awards, I think that it's still pretty top praise that it got nominated for those. It did very well. It made a lot of money at the box office, and obviously, we're still talking about it 30 years on. So happy 30-year anniversary. Maybe it'll be back in the theater. Maybe we can go see it in the theater this year sometime, Michaela, for the anniversary. I don't know, but that is The Fugitive in a nutshell. It's a really great crime drama, so make sure you go and check it out, to make sure that you mix up a manhunt to have while you're watching it, because it is a really good accompaniment to the movie, I will say. So mix up one of those, take pictures, and you can send those in to us on our Instagram and Twitter and Hive. It's at Drink the Movies, and on Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to see pictures of ours, episode recaps, find out about all of our other episodes that we've done and all the other recipes, you can do that on our website, which is www.drinkthemovies.com. If you're into getting some bonus content and supporting the podcast, patreon.com/Drink the Movies is where you want to go do that. We're doing bonus episodes. We've got a lot of fun Oscar stuff coming up here over the next 6 weeks or so as we watch 1,000 movies and try to keep them in any sort of order. And then,
Right.
we'll be doing our full Oscar deep dive on the main show, like we always do. So keep an eye out for that. And I guess probably the best way to follow along with us is making sure that you're subscribed to the podcast. Where you're listening right now is a good place, but where else can they do that, Michaela?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Good Pods, Nearpods, anywhere where Anchor podcasts are distributed. We do 2 drops a week. We do our lobby bars early in the week, and then we do these deep dives later in the week. And we'd love it if you join us. We're really excited about the community we're building. It is Oscar season. I mean, we keep talking about this, but there's something like 55 movies out there that we got to watch and talk about. You don't have to watch them. You can just listen to us talk about them if you want. And listen to us talk about all the drinking that we're doing. There's a lot of that doesn't sound great. There's a lot of really great cocktails out there, and we just really are humbled to be part of the community that shares the love of movies and cocktails together in one place.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, Michaela, we have a lot of movies to watch, and next week we are doing one that's getting all of the Oscar praise. This one's going to be Best Animated Picture, almost guaranteed, but that is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. We're going to be back talking about this week. Have a really fun cocktail for that. And like I said, make sure to check out our Patreon if you want some bonus episodes. We're doing the rundown on all 10 Best Picture nominees. As soon as we're able to see them all, we're going to be putting out a mini episode for that. So make sure you're over there following along with that. And yeah, Michaela, The Fugitive, Manhunt cocktail. I think that's pretty good. So what do you think?
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
All right.
Well, we will see everybody next time on Drink
the
Movies.
Movies. Why don't you think me up a coffee and a chocolate donut with some of those sprinkles?